Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.
We hope you enjoy listening to this podcast of St. Louis on the Air, brought to you by University College at Washington University. With undergraduate and graduate programs, part-time, evening, and online. University College at Washington University, offering world-class education within reach.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Don Marsh. When we think of visionaries, we don't often ascribe that insight to teenagers, but there is an interesting story that's come to light through the Missouri History Museum Teens Make History project. The short version, a St. Louis high school student envisioned the arch on the St. Louis riverfront years before Eero Saarinen's famous structure was even on the drawing board. 85 years ago, students at Central High were asked to look into the future. They did so with some degree of accuracy. With me in studio, Abdullah Brown-El has written about it in a Teens Make History research project. He's now a student at Amherst. Elizabeth Pickard is Director of Education and Interpretation for the Missouri History Museum and works closely with the Teens Make History program. Elizabeth and Abdullah, welcome. Nice to have you.
Nice to be here. How's it going?
It's going great. I want to talk to you a little bit about how you came upon this story about this young lady 85 years ago.
All right. So do you want the short version or the
Yes.
long version? Okay. So throughout high school, I worked with the Missouri History Museum Teens Make History program, and we were doing research for an exhibit. It's supposed to come out
Spring of 2020.
Right, so in spring of 2020, and we were just researching about, the origins behind the name Gateway to the West. So my former boss and I, Ellen Kuhn, we were reading a book about, the history of the riverfront, and we came across a story. It was just a little blurb on the page in the middle of the book about a girl named Geneva Abbott, who had the idea for an arch on the riverfront. There was a quote, I have it here. She quoted Alfred Tennyson saying, "All experience is an arch where through gleams that untraveled world whose margin fades forever and forever when I move." So with that, she had the idea to draw an arch on the riverfront. So I thought that was really cool because that was obviously before Eero Saarinen thought of that too. So,
and that again, 85 years ago, and there's a picture.
Right.
Where does the picture come from? Did she do it? Geneva do it?
She did. So it was definitely really interesting, that story too, because the yearbook that we originally had in the Library and Research Center, the Missouri Historical Society's Research Center, that yearbook actually didn't have the picture in it. So the staff there, they were wonderful, and they were able to track down another original copy of the yearbook from the St. Louis Public Schools, and we're able to see that, and there it is. It's that same structure. That's reminiscent of the arch that we have now. So that was definitely really cool to see.
It looks strikingly like it. Elizabeth, what did you make of all of these discoveries?
Oh, well, this is exactly what we always hope for, of course. And we're so proud of the work that our Teens Make History exhibitors were doing. The whole idea behind this exhibit is to say what's in a name. What is the civic identity of St. Louis and how has it changed over time? And it was wonderful. One of the things we always hope for is for our guests, for our Teens Make History students, to make personal connections to history. And so we were thrilled to find this story of teenagers during the Great Depression dreaming of what the future of St. Louis would be. And this was Geneva's incredible vision. So, of course, we were very proud. And Abdullah has always been a very thorough researcher. So we were really excited for him to find something because, of course, you can spend hours and hours and hours and not track down what you're looking for. So he struck a pot of gold this time.
Abdullah, part of the story also is the fact that there were other students
Right.
who were looking ahead, and they had some interesting ideas, some of which were talked about years later.
Exactly. So throughout the yearbook, they asked the students in general just to, it was a lot different than the yearbook that we had in high school. It was more of like a showcase for the students to work through the year. And that year, they just asked all the students, what do you envision the future of St. Louis being? And I thought, personally, that was really inspiring because, as Elizabeth said, they were in the midst of the Great Depression. So there was, plenty of time, plenty of room for them to, look down upon things, or see the future as bleak, but they instead decided to be optimistic. So, I kind of thought that reminded me of, kind of a youth movement movement today, and never to discount the voices of the young, and what they see might create for a better future, better St. Louis for us all.
What were some of the things that they were forecasting?
So some of them, there were a lot of kids who drew pictures of like this, what they expected the skyline to look like 100 years from now, and what they expected the neighborhoods, and of course there were a couple renderings of like Busch Stadium and things like that. But and some of it was just kids drawing histories of like different things in St. Louis, and a lot of reports on like the research that they found too, and different aspects of the history of St. Louis. It was definitely
Elizabeth, my understanding is they also were projecting kind of a Disneyland or a Disney World on the riverfront, which at one time was considered by Walt Disney himself, as I understand it.
Right. So that was another thing. There were a lot of visions people had for the riverfront. I forgot exactly how many blocks were cleared out, but a pretty substantial part of what's now downtown St. Louis, where the arch grounds are. That was a pretty thriving neighborhood. It's actually the center of the fur trade in the U.S. from what I've seen in the research, and they cleared that all out. And it was a struggle to decide what was going to be done with this land, because they secured a good amount of federal appropriations. They declared it an urban blight land. So, a lot of people were, struggling to figure out what to do with it. And it ended up being a parking lot for a while until they built the arch. So that was cool.
And so they did. Do we have any idea whether Geneva Abbott ever reacted to the actual arch? She lived long enough to see that realized. Do we know?
I don't know.
No.
Yeah, that was definitely something, thinking back upon it now, that I should have looked into more, but I sadly don't know about that. But that would be something that'd be cool to follow up with.
Well, she'd be well over 100 years old now if she were still alive.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, and you're part of the project. What did you learn about the kids of the 1930s vis-a-vis the kids of today? Abdullah indicated that they're a lot alike. Do you get that impression?
I really do. I think that, there's sort of an old saying that everybody since Aristotle has been talking about kids today.
Yeah, sure.
And I do think that there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of intellectual power there. There's a lot of talent and skill. And that's one of the best things about the Teens Make History program, in my opinion, is that it brings the strength of those voices and of that vision and of that energy to the museum and says, this is our community. This isn't just we have our community and then there's some teens. It's really that they're an integral part to our future as well as to our past.
Tell us a little more about the Teens Make History program. How exactly does it work, and how do people get involved?
You bet. So Teens Make History is entering its 12th year in January. It'll turn 12 years old. It's a work-based learning program, and you enter the program through the Teens Make History Academy. And as it would happen, we're actually accepting applications. It's open to any high school student, freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior who would like to apply. You can find out more at mohistory.org. The application deadline is the 24th. And so if you're interested in the program, I do encourage you to go online and apply. It's a pretty short process. You go through an 8-week mini museum studies course called the Teens Make History Academy. And then at the end of those 8 weeks, the students who are successful in that academy, which looks at all different areas of museum work, from exhibits to education to museum theater to marketing and communications, they can then apply for paid apprenticeships. And the paid apprenticeships are with either the Teens Make History exhibitors, which was the team that Abdullah was part of, and they'll continue working on this exhibit, What's in a Name, and then the Teens Make History players who research, write, and perform plays in the museum. And they can stay through graduation in high school.
So what is going to come of Abdullah's project? You say 2020 is going to be the unveiling, I guess. What is that going to be all about?
Well, so there's two things. Actually, Abdullah wrote already for us a blog post on our blog, History Happens Here. So if people want to read his research, they can look that up on mohistory.org.
With pictures, by the way.
With pictures, yeah, you can see everything there. And then all of the teens, this is kind of an unusually long exhibit development process for the Teens Make History students. So they've started working on the exhibit narrative, which talks about this is what a visitor will experience when they come in. These are the big questions that we have. These are the sort of issues that we'd like to talk about. And they'll work with our adult design staff and our adult curators to figure out what objects, what images they would like to put in. They'll write the label copy, and that will go up on the walls again spring of 2020.
And for how long will it be on display?
I believe it's scheduled to be up right now for about 6 months.
Abdullah, what got you into all of this?
History was always my favorite subject since elementary school. And, in high school, I wanted something meaningful to do. So my mom told me about this program. Actually, I looked on the website and, I was definitely hooked from there. So I applied to go to the academy. And I think that was spring of 2015 or 2016, my sophomore year in high school. And from there, I've, just stuck with the History Museum since. It's nice. I just got back in town, actually, so that was one of the first places I had to stop again.
Thanksgiving break from Amherst.
Right.
Are you majoring in history at Amherst?
I think I'm going to do economics and political science, but I'm taking a lot of history classes. Yeah.
What have some of the other youngsters who have been involved with Elizabeth over the years gone on to do? Have they kind of pursued this theme in their lives?
We certainly have had students who came in knowing that they wanted to do history and are continuing to do history, but we're really proud of the program as a means of teaching job skills. So regardless of what you go on to do, we're teaching communication, collaboration, responsibility, how to work in a team, how to manage resources. They get an exhibit budget. They've got to make decisions so that whatever field they go into, they're set up to succeed. And so we've had students go on to do everything from being a site manager for Habitat to Humanity, to being, I have one student who's about to graduate as a veterinarian. We've had others who have decided to become actors and others who are pursuing work in history museums. So it really runs the gambit of possible careers.
You're a recent alumnus of all of this, Abdullah.
Right.
Has it gotten to the point where it shaped your life in any way?
Oh, absolutely. So in high school, we had to, do a lot of research papers. So, definitely my experience at the History Museum helped me when I was writing that term paper in high school and a lot of things like that. And one of the things the program really emphasizes is transferable job skills. So, no matter what we do, we'll have like a solid foundation of, how to behave in a workplace, that kind of thing. And just over the summer, there's a lot of enrichment type programs that the program exposes us to. So definitely I'd recommend to anyone, even if you don't exactly want to work in a museum, or especially if you do want to work in a museum in the future, to check out the program.
By the way, we'll put links to your website and to this blog post, by the way, that Abdullah has been involved in, our website at stlpublicradio.org. Elizabeth, how did all this get started? Whose brainchild was it?
Well, we knew, this is going back now to 2006. I was a graduate research assistant. I was in the Museum Studies program at the University of Missouri, St. Louis.
There you go.
And I was a graduate research assistant at the Missouri History Museum. And at the time, there was some interest in looking at non-school hours programs. So how we knew we were reaching students through field trips, but how could we have a sort of more sustained relationship with students? And at the time, some new research was coming out by a woman named Shirley Bryce Heath about how arts and humanities programs could be some of the most successful programs for teenagers in terms of strong positive outcomes, in terms of college bound rates, in terms of employment rates. And so we started the program with 4 teens and the money from the docent budget for one semester in January of 2007. So it was me and 4 students, and it has steadily grown over time. It's a creative youth development program, which again ties those job skills in with creative endeavors like developing exhibits, like writing and researching plays. And so at the time, it was, as I said, just me and 4 students. And so I was with them every single day. Now I stop in a lot less, but I do still get to work with them. And it's one of the highlights of my professional day, no question, when I get to work with the teens.
And how many young people have gone through the program over those years?
Oh, gosh, I think that we're up to about 80 graduates at this stage.
Let me go back to your story, Abdullah, if I may. What else did you learn about those kids? We've talked about the arch and some of the other things. What else struck you about these kids from the 30s?
I definitely talked about it a little bit, but just the fact that they were dreamers themselves. They were living through a tremendous area of a lot of hardship, and they still found reason to be optimistic. So that really stuck with me. It's easy to look at the news today away and become cynical. But, it was inspirational that they were able to say, this is what I want the future to look like. And, definitely I think everyone in my generation, we're working towards, what we want our future to look like so we can draw from that.
Only about a minute left. Was the yearbook from 1933
It was.
much like the yearbook when you graduated from high school?
I just graduated in May, so I've been looking over my yearbook a lot, and it's definitely not like my yearbook. My friends and we all threw a lot of inside jokes in. There definitely wasn't as academic as theirs, but, I do really like my yearbook, and I think that's something, everyone can look back to being high school graduates.
Did the kids in 33 sign the yearbooks the way they do today?
They did. I actually forgot to sign my yearbook. On our last day of school, we have a field day and we have a picnic lunch, and I spilled a little bit of barbecue sauce on that page, so that kind of ruined that for me. But that was cool.
Well, it's a great project, and it's most interesting. We have a question here. Which arch do you prefer, the one of Geneva Abbott or the one that we have down on the riverfront right now?
I like both of them. I especially like the one that, does in fact exist. So both of them are cool.
How about you, Elizabeth?
Oh, gosh, I think that's a terrible question to have to answer. I think the thing that I liked the most is just that it was something that was clearly in the ether. It was in the zeitgeist. Yeah. It was something that seemed logical to her and seemed logical that much later. It was like it was meant to be.
Right. Well, I want to thank you both so much for being with us. Elizabeth Pickard, thank you for being with us. Good luck with your program.
Thank you.
Abdullah Brown-El, thank you for being with us. Congratulations to you for all you've accomplished so far.
Thank you.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.